It was a case that shocked America and changed the way the world looks at over-the-counter medicine forever. A mystery rooted in tragedy, fear, and an act so insidious it would forever be etched into public memory. Today we dive into one of the most unsettling unsolved cases in American history, the 1982 Chicago Tylenol murders. In the fall of 1982, the city of Chicago became the epicenter of a terrifying string of deaths. Seemingly healthy individuals, some young, some in the prime of life, collapsed and died suddenly, with no clear explanation. It wasn't long before authorities realized the link. Each of the victims had taken extra-strength Tylenol capsules shortly before their deaths. What followed was a massive manhunt, a revolution in pharmaceutical safety, and a mystery that has, to this day, never been officially solved. The nightmare began on September 29, 1982, when 12-year-old Mary Kellerman of Elk Grove Village, Illinois, died shortly after taking a Tylenol for sore throat. Just hours later, 27-year-old postal worker Adam Jonas collapsed and died at his home in Arlington Heights. While the family gathered to mourn his passing, his brother Stanley and sister-in-law Teresa took Tylenol from the same bottle. They too were soon dead. In the coming days, 3 more people would die similarly: Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Mary Reiner, all of whom had consumed extra-strength Tylenol. The pattern was unmistakable. Authorities began removing Tylenol from shelves, warning the public and testing bottles. Panic swept through the nation. Lab tests revealed what many feared. The Tylenol capsules were laced with potassium cyanide, a deadly poison that prevents the body cells from using oxygen. In significant quantities, death can occur in mere minutes. Johnson & Johnson, the makers of Tylenol, faced the crisis head-on. While not responsible for the tampering, the company issued an unprecedented nationwide recall for more than 31 million bottles of Tylenol, an act that would cost them over $100 million. They also offered replacement products and a reward for information. This event marked the first major product recall of its kind in the pharmaceutical industry and was a defining moment in corporate crisis management. Johnson & Johnson's transparent handling of the situation is still studied in business schools today. The deaths gripped the nation. Stores pulled Tylenol from the shelves. People were afraid to take common medications. The Food and Drug Administration urged drug manufacturers to adopt tamper-evident packaging. This led to the widespread use of foil seals, plastic wrapping, and child-resistant packaging that we take for granted today. New federal anti-tampering laws were passed. By 1983, the Tylenol murders had not only prompted legislative changes, but also fundamentally altered how food and drug products were packaged and sold. In the midst of panic and investigation, a suspect emerged. James William Lewis, a man with a history of fraud, sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million to stop the killings. Though there were no direct evidence linking Lewis to the tampered capsules, he was convicted of extortion and served 13 years in prison. He denied involvement in the murders and was never charged with them. To this day, Lewis remains the most closely associated name with the case. While many investigators remain convinced of his involvement, the lack of physical evidence has left the case open.
40 years ago, 7 otherwise healthy Chicago area residents died after taking cyanide-laced Tylenol. There were 3 main persons of interest early on back in 1982, but investigators were never able to solve these murders. But now a potential break in the case. CBS 2 investigator Brad Edwards learned one of the Tylenol suspects, James Lewis, is again at the center of the investigation. Lewis was interviewed for hours outside his home in Boston just last week. Brad has traveled thousands of miles tracking the life of Lewis, a person connected to another murder you've probably never heard of, but one that prosecutors and detectives won't soon forget.
It was here in Kansas City, Missouri that police made the connection that has become the hottest lead so far in the search for the Tylenol cyanide killer.
Suspect, James Lewis.
A bizarre 1978 murder case.
Victim, Raymond West.
His legs cut off, his body stuffed in a plastic bag.
From Detective Dave Barton.
My involvement in the Raymond West case started when a body was found in the attic of the house. A game hoist was used to haul the body up into the attic. Do you remember anything about the hoist?
No. What I remember are the ropes. I know my way around knots. I was in the Navy and I was a sailor. And I could tell that this was not a run-of-the-mill knot. And I opened up those bags of rope that included the slip knots that tied Raymond West's legs and torso up.
Do you remember that smell now?
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget it.
That case had been thrown out for insufficient medical evidence and improper police procedures.
Just another one of the
Say it.
guts that plagued this case.
It was the Raymond West murder case that eventually led Chicago police to investigate James Lewis. Our Maurice sat down with Brad and found even more red flags after digging into Lewis's past for months.
When you were chasing him down specifically with the third suspect, looking into his background, did anything give you a little thrill? As you're digging, you investigate all the time. I'm curious if anything jumped out at you that made you think, okay, I'm really onto something here, or made you push even harder to get information from him to find him to have him be a piece, part of this piece that you're.
Yeah, you're right. There is that jolt of energy when you're investigating something like this and you find a little nugget. I went to the National Archives, looked at the entire case file, more than 1,000 pages, laid out really against James Lewis. And I started from moment one. You know, I found out he was born to parents in Memphis, Tennessee. He was soon after abandoned by said parents. He was then adopted and raised in a little place near the Ozarks called Carl Junction, Missouri. Then, at a young age, tried to murder his adopted mother with an axe. The real thrust of my focus was what happened 4 years before the Tylenol murders took place. It took place in 82. Got flashback to 1978. In 1978, a tax client of James Lewis, his client, Raymond West, was found murdered and dismembered, and his mummified remains were found in the attic of his Kansas City home. And I thought, I've got to track everything I possibly can. I've got to track everything down about the murder of Raymond West that's available. We lay it all out in the piece that comes. But you know, one of the critical elements that broke that case initially open was after Mr. West disappeared, James Lewis tried to cash a $5,000 check from the missing man. And
You're pulling all these threads.
and it is red flag after red flag after red flag. James Lewis was a suspect, wasn't given his Miranda warning. Truly a technicality. Case got kicked. A couple years later, James Lewis was the center of investigation. It was really a large investigation involving identity fraud and land fraud. That was 1981-ish. It was a federal case and a state case. The feds and the local cops swept into Lewis's home in Kansas City. They got a bunch of evidence. They thought they had a good case. Bam. James Lewis skips town, comes to Chicago. 1 year later, the Tylenol murders.
Some have speculated that it was a disgruntled employee or perhaps a random act of domestic terrorism. Others believed it could have been a copycat crime or even a cover-up for something else. Despite years of FBI investigation and renewed interest in the 2000s and the 2010s, including the retesting of old evidence with modern forensic technology, no new breakthroughs have solved the case. The Tylenol murders remain one of the most impactful criminal cases in the 20th century, not only because of the lives lost, but because of what it exposed about consumer vulnerability. It sparked sweeping changes in public health, medicine packaging, and law enforcement protocol for product tampering. The tragedy also became a case study in effective crisis management, with Johnson & Johnson's response widely praised for prioritizing consumer safety over profits. Moreover, the psychological impact of the American public was profound. It shattered the illusion of everyday safety and left many to ponder how such an attack could be committed so easily and go unsolved. More than 4 decades later, the case remains open. While there have been suspects, interviews, and renewed interest, no one has ever been officially charged with the murder. The families of the victims still seek answers, and the FBI has kept the case active in hopes that modern science or a tip from the public could someday bring closure. And so the mystery endures, a reminder of our vulnerability. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, respectful, and thought-provoking, please consider subscribing and sharing to support my deep dives into history's most enduring mysteries. Let me know in the comments what you really think happened in the Tylenol murders, and whether you believe the case will ever truly be solved. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember the past is never really gone. It is just waiting to be uncovered.